Hey guys, it's Jessie with Omaha Mom Talks, and I have some exciting news. I am partnering with Edwards Auto Group, a local car dealership with locations in Nebraska and Iowa, for a fun partnership called Mom vs. Machine. Every couple of weeks, I'm going to be test driving a new family vehicle and giving it the full mom review. We're taking it out of the showroom and into the hands of me and my family of 4. We're going to be seeing if it can handle car seats, snacks, strollers, backpacks, how easy it is to clean, how much room do we have, and I'll be giving you my honest thoughts. If you have a car that you have been eyeing, let me know. If you have any must-have amenities when looking for a car, share them with me, and I'll be sure to give those a closer look. Follow along and see which car can actually keep up with our family chaos. Welcome back to Omaha Mom Talks. I'm your host, Jessie Gutierrez, therapist, mom, and supporter of women. Today, we are talking about a topic that is in a lot of mom circles, and that is divorce. From the emotional toll to the legal steps, it can all feel like a lot to figure out on your own. Today, I am so grateful to be joined by Tracy Hightower-Henne. She is a partner and attorney at Hightower Reff Law here in Omaha. She's joining us today to talk to us about Divorce 101 from an attorney who gets it. Today, I'm sitting down with Tracy to talk through what many people don't know about the divorce process legally and emotionally. Let's get into it. All right, Tracy, welcome to Omaha Mom Talks.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm super excited to share your wisdom on this topic of divorce. It's something that, I'm hearing a lot frequently from folks I support people through in my practice, and so I'm excited to get into that chat with you. Before we jump into the legal stuff, just share with our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Tracy Hightower-Henne. I'm one of the founding partners at Hightower Reff Law. So it's a law firm that my law partner and I started almost 13 years ago now.
Okay.
And we have grown to 10 attorneys, and we all happen to be women attorneys in our office. So we're pretty proud of the things that we have accomplished and the things that we do to help people through some traumatic things in their lives, including divorce. Yeah. We do also some estate planning, which overlaps a lot with divorce too, right? You get a divorce, you need a new will. We do work comp, so you get injured on the job. So it's a lot of different types of things that happen to people that we help them through. Mm-hmm. So it's rewarding at times and difficult too, but I'm from Omaha.
Okay. Born and raised?
Born and raised. I spent 3 years outside of Nebraska going to law school in Michigan, and that's the only time I've lived outside of Nebraska. So.
Did you always know you wanted to move back and have your career here?
No, I think when I was in law school, I thought, I'm open to whatever. And I think I realized living in Michigan or living outside of Nebraska that the grass isn't really greener anywhere else. You know, everywhere has its own little things, benefits and disadvantages of different cities. And my family's from Omaha, so it's easy to come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you ever practiced any types of law that you're not currently focusing on?
Yes. So I actually have a master's in tax law.
Okay.
So when I was in law school, I sort of went down this path of tax law, and I thought it was really interesting. I do think it's interesting, and actually now it has a pretty big overlap in divorce. Just being able to read the Internal Revenue Code is a whole foreign language. But anyway, so I, out of law school, worked as a tax attorney for a railroad and learned a lot of things. Yeah. It wasn't the right fit for me. My personality was, I really wanted to help people. And so I left the big corporation and opened my own law firm and did my first divorce, almost 15 years ago. And I don't know, it was thousands of divorces ago.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's chat a little bit about, first of all, let me just say, I love that you are women owned and that you have, centered around women and families and hiring female attorneys. Do you feel like that's something that maybe sets you apart from other law firms in town, or do you think it makes a difference?
Yeah, certainly. I think we might be the only law firm of our size that has only female attorneys. The law is still a male-dominated industry, so we still deal with all of the things that, women in professions deal with, sort of on a tenfold scale, right? Doing the good old boys game that we have to play sometimes. And so a lot of our mentoring in our office with our younger lawyers is like, let's be better than them. And sometimes we do have to work harder. And we show up more prepared often. So sometimes that, just
plays in your benefit for sure. Yeah. And the people that you're supporting.
Yeah.
So we're here to chat today about Divorce 101. So this is a conversation that I'm sure we could have multiple, episodes on. So we're just going to try and stick to some of the basics and see where that leads us.
Yes.
I hear all the time from moms that are either contemplating or in it or even after, right? There's so much reflection that comes after. But I first want to just chat a little bit about the basics. So for someone who's just starting to think about divorce, what are some first tips that you have for them?
Number one is doing a consult with a lawyer, and probably more than one lawyer.
Okay.
I can't stress that enough. When we were going over kind of what you wanted to talk about, that's the theme that is underlying for everything is have a consult with a lawyer who does divorce law.
Okay.
What I see all the time is people going to Facebook and social media and asking for legal advice, and it's all terrible advice.
Okay.
And when you sit down with an attorney who's experienced in divorce specifically, and you are explaining your specific life and your facts, you are going to get tailored advice.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing, too, people going to ChatGPT for advice, too. And ChatGPT doesn't know anything about Nebraska and then specifically Douglas County or Sarpy County, because each county has their own little things and ticks, too. So when you are contemplating divorce, like the moment that thought comes in your mind, do a consult with an attorney, with two attorneys, and you're going to get information that might solidify your decision. Yep, I'm going to get divorced, and I'm comfortable with the information that I got and the path that's going to take me. And sometimes you have a consult with a lawyer and you're like, oh, now's not the right time for whatever reason. You have financial things happening, or you get information about what may happen with parenting time and you're like, can't deal with that. Yeah. Or you need to get some ducks in a row before you actually do it. And I think the biggest thing that I remind people that people forget, it is confidential having a consult with a lawyer.
Okay.
Like maybe turn your location off your phone, right? If your spouse is looking where you're going.
Yeah.
I recently had a client park her car at Target, leave her phone in the car at Target, and then her friend drives her to our office. So, it is confidential if you can pay cash for a consult so your spouse doesn't know, what's this, charge to a lawyer's office. But getting tailored advice, and the reason I always recommend doing at least two consults, you may feel okay about the consult that you have with a lawyer, but you should feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
So if you just leave feeling okay, do a consult with another lawyer and go, oh, I feel really good about it now doing a second consult. You can see that
contrast.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
The attorney-client relationship is, when you're going through a divorce, is the most important relationship you can have with anyone. And so you need to feel comfortable and confident in their ability to hear you and listen to you and represent you. Because what you're about to go through is not easy.
Right. There's so many crossovers between finding a good therapist, I'm hearing, and finding a good attorney. Because I too am see a couple folks, do some consults, see if it feels, because that relationship is the biggest influencer on the therapeutic relationship. And it sounds like in the attorney process as well. So I am on all the mom Facebook groups local to Omaha. And so every week, if not daily, I'm hearing or seeing posts, who has a good recommendation for a good divorce attorney. And so I want to chat about this topic of just finding the right attorney for a moment, because I'll see names and you'll see like them repeated of like, I loved this person, right? And then it may not be a good fit for somebody else. I think that's important because there was one name in town that I kept seeing repeatedly as a very great attorney, and I actually recommended that person to a family member based off the Facebook group, and it was not a good experience for my family member. And so, can you speak to a little bit about what might be some good questions for like a consult for someone to try and help them decide, and then also what might be some red flags?
Ooh, yeah. I will only say on these social media recommendations is it's so true that one lawyer is not the right fit for everyone. Yeah. And so it's nice to get a whole bunch of names, from those. And then again, do consults because I'm not the right lawyer for everyone. Yeah. And my job is to give advice, and it often is not something you want to hear, sure. right? Like, do this thing, and you're like, I don't want to do that thing. And I'm like, but you have to do that thing,
Which I just want to say, to me, that is a green flag. Like, I don't want an attorney that is just going to agree with everything that I say.
Right.
And be like, you're so right. That's like, I want somebody who has the expertise and the wisdom to look at the big picture and can give me that expert advice that I'm paying for. And so that may be disagreeing with me or telling me hard stuff.
Yeah, and in the consult, I'd much rather tell my client realistic expectations than to tell them everything they want to hear, give them all these false hopes of what may happen in their divorce over the next potential year, and then I can't deliver that, and I know I can't deliver that. And there are some lawyers in town and all over that will just tell you what you want to hear in order to just get your business as a client. But one of the things that, as I was thinking about this and the consult specifically, and because people always say, like, what are the best questions? And a good, client will prepare for their consult with a list of questions. You come in with all these things on your mind. And I often will start my consult with, just tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
And I like to really have the conversation as if we're just having coffee, right? Like, you start where you want to start, and that gives me an indication too of like what's important to you. Because if you're going to start talking about money, all right, that's probably the most important thing. But if you're going to start talking about kids, that's probably the most important thing. So let's focus on that. We can never get through everything in an hour too. So we really try to hone in on what is the thing that you want to leave that consult with, feeling like was answered for you. But the best consult is you get to the end and I say to you, okay, what questions do you have? And you look at your list and you're like, you've answered everything.
Okay.
And I think the red flags are an attorney rushing everything in that hour, or, and I will say you get what you pay for. Okay. There are lawyers in town that do free consults. Sometimes, though, it's just the paralegal on the phone. When you are doing a consult with a lawyer for an hour, you are getting actual legal advice. I can't, at that point, then even do a consult with your spouse. I'm conflicted out because...
Okay, I do want to mention that because I've seen that on some TV shows, and I wanted to confirm if that was true. So if I get a consult with an attorney and then my partner calls you, that is then a conflict of interest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it's because we've spent an hour now talking about confidential information that I now can't,
unhear.
Yeah. And so, red flags are telling the client what they want to hear, not giving realistic expectations. Like, you should leave the consult going, oh yeah, this is going to be a journey, right? You shouldn't leave the consult going, that lawyer's going to give me everything I want.
Because that's not realistic.
No. I mean, we as divorce attorneys can never get our clients everything they want. And that's sometimes the hardest part of our job, is telling them, like, you might win this thing, but you're not going to win this thing. So we got to pick.
Yeah.
Which battle do we want to fight?
Yeah.
Other red flags are really just a lawyer not listening to you. They're talking about what they want to talk about. They're talking in legalese, and you're like, I don't even know these words of what you're saying. This is my job every day, so I know all the big words, but I have to remember, like, you don't know what discovery means. I can tell you what that means. And then also just, having that feeling of trust in the consult. you're not going to know, right? Like, I trust this person with my life after
Right.
an hour, but you should feel pretty comfortable after that consult
Mm-hmm.
that, like, oh, okay, she's described the scenario where if I call the office, I'm going to talk to someone. I'm not going to get bounced around too. And so I think having good questions about what does it look like when I communicate with your office, you know, what's the expectation of how soon you're going to call me back, or am I doing emails and phone calls? So sort of like, what is the expectation of how I'm going to be treated?
Yeah, and our
too.
relationship moving
Yeah.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
When talking about consults, I think that's such good advice, and we were kind of already touched on this, but like what might be good for your neighbor or your friend as an attorney might not be, even though that attorney was great and worked well for them, like you have a very specific set of circumstances. And so finding that attorney that you can do the consult with and really speak to what's going on for you and what your hopes are, and
Yeah.
figuring out if that is a good fit for you or not, I think sounds like very much worth someone's time.
Yeah, and we see people's true colors when they're going through a divorce. And if you talk to your neighbor and they're like, I went with Joe Schmo as my attorney, you will like him too. Well, you may not know that you know, neighbor went through some things that they never told you about, and that doesn't apply to your case. And really, it is so specific to each person. And there's a sort of phenomenon that is often true that we usually hire lawyers that have similar personalities as us.
Okay.
I'm pretty straightforward. I'm not a therapist, but I can listen to you, you know, and I can care, but I have a job to do. And so, you know, if someone is kind of that sort of down to business, ready to go, they're probably a good fit for me.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily matter about the facts, really. It's like, how are we going to jive, you know, as an attorney and a client?
Another thing that I see all the time in the mom Facebook groups is, I want a bulldog in the courtroom. Who can you recommend that is going to be a bulldog? And you know, you have some thoughts about that. And so I'd love to hear them.
I want insert name of aggressive animal, right? Barracuda, shark, bulldog, all the things. I think people want that idea, and I think we see that on TV. In reality, you don't want that.
Okay.
It's expensive. It creates so many unnecessary hearings in court. You end up being in court way more often than you need to, and oftentimes you're just pissing the judge off, really.
Okay.
Judges can see through that behavior. They really expect the two attorneys to be professional and help and try to settle a case. You know, we can be a bulldog in a very professional way.
In a smart way.
In a smart way. And I think that's what women are good at. Like, if you call a male attorney a bulldog, he's probably literally hanging up on you.
He's probably literally an asshole. Yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't do anyone any good, right? That just means now I have to file a motion in court. I have to have a hearing with the judge that's probably 4 weeks down the road, and all that time we're not getting anything accomplished. So you know, I think if we can switch that narrative to, I want an attorney that cares about me, as opposed to some aggressive attorney that isn't doing anyone any benefit and is just costing you so much more money.
Yeah.
So if we can sort of flip that.
And I get it. Like, I get the want and the desire. You're in a place where it's very emotional. Maybe you've been hurt or harmed, and so you want some cutthroat support. But I like the kind of reframe of the language of an attorney that cares for me, that's going to work with me, advocate for me in a way that gets us to a place we want to be. But also, we do want to save our coins. Like, nobody wants that's going through a divorce is like, I have endless amounts of money that I'm willing to pay for this legal process.
The thing that I'll say too, you know, we have clients that go a different direction in the middle of their divorce because they say to me or another lawyer in our office, you're not being aggressive enough and I need someone to be more aggressive.
Okay.
And we will sort of look back and say, okay, at what point could I have been more aggressive, right? We know the judges, literally very specifically, which judge wants something less aggressive. And then each county is so different. There's like local court rules that people just don't know about.
Yeah.
So we have to attempt to settle this issue in some counties before we can file a motion. So if we're going to be aggressive and file some motion, the judge is literally going to be like, get out of my courtroom, go do what you're supposed to do. So we know when it matters to be aggressive, and I'm using air quotes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we have an opposing counsel, so there's this, like, every case has a culture. You have who are the two attorneys and who is the judge. And that's what makes a case unique to everyone else's case in the world is I can represent this client differently because I have an opposing counsel that's really good to work with. Like, I'm going to settle this case because we can both work through this. But then there's an opposing counsel that's a jerk. Like, no, we're not going to settle this case because they like to litigate.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go to court. So each case is unique in that sense that you change one of those factors, it's going to be a different scenario.
Yeah. For the kind of basics, so walk me through what are the filing requirements? And I don't know if that's an easy or complicated question, but in Nebraska specifically. We do have listeners all over, but let's hone in on Nebraska.
So in Nebraska, you have to live in Nebraska for at least a year prior to filing. If you don't, we can start with a legal separation. And then when you hit a 1-year residency requirement, we can change it into a divorce. We file in the county that you live in.
Okay.
And we start with a very generic document, and that gets filed in the court. And it gives us a case number, and it gives us our judge assignment. And then from there, if you have kids, then we do a couple of sort of check the box things. You have to take a parenting class online. But the requirements are simple. We sometimes hear all this talk about no fault.
Mm-hmm.
And in Nebraska, we're a no fault state. And what that means is we just don't have to prove that someone's at fault.
Okay.
There's other states that are a fault state, which means we have to say our spouse did something wrong.
Got it.
It's easier in a no fault state, and it's better. It creates less tension, I think, in the case. So we like that we're in no fault state.
Okay, good to know. What if one spouse is not agreeable to divorce? How can we move forward, or can we?
I always like to say, too bad. If you want a divorce, you're getting a divorce. Sometimes though the case can only go as fast as the slowest person.
Okay, right.
Especially if we're trying to settle the case, then both parties have to be motivated to settle at the same timeline too. But if the other spouse is really digging their heels in and saying, I do not want this, and they're probably giving their lawyer some, suggestions to stall the case or make it more difficult, we can file a motion, we can go to court, we get a trial date, and it will happen.
Okay.
And so a lot of times people are like, well, my spouse doesn't want to get divorced. Too bad.
Okay.
It'll happen.
Okay. And when we were talking earlier about consults, I'm just curious, do you recommend that someone gets a consult prior to like sharing with their partner, I want a divorce, or how do you?
I think if the timing works out, yeah. In a perfect world, that's great. It just arms you with information.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the more information you can have, the better. And sometimes I'll spend a half hour of our consult talking through the logistics of the details of telling your spouse.
Okay. So you can offer some support there on how to make it maybe less.
And sometimes
contentious.
we have, safety concerns about sharing that information. Hey, I'm going to file for divorce. And so sometimes we talk about the actual, like, where are you going to be physically when you tell your spouse?
Safety planning.
Yeah. What are you going to do with the kids the moment you tell your spouse? Like, have an exit plan in that moment. Just means leaving the house for the evening or the night or whatever. And so I think in the perfect world, now sometimes you might be the spouse that has been told by your spouse that you want a divorce, and so then you're coming to the consult,
after you've been given that information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
good point.
yeah.
There's so much that where we could go with this. I'm just curious, what are some of the misconceptions you see when people start this process?
Everything that you read on social media is a misconception. I mean, truly, it's really scary. And I'm in a lot of the moms groups too. And I want so badly to go in and say, like, no, what you just said is not good advice. Like, please don't follow that. And I would be exhausted. That would be a full-time job for me to do that. And I just hope that people, you know, get in with a consult. And sometimes I'll jump in and say, like, hey, just do a consult with a lawyer. I think some misconceptions, you know, are a lot around custody. And one big one that really just popped into my mind is like, well, my kids don't want to go, you know, to
that partner's house.
Yeah. And the misconception is they'll just tell the judge what they want. And judges do not want to talk to kids. They do not want to have kids testify. There is no magic age. People are like, oh, they're over 12, and so they're old enough. Or, oh, they're 16, they're definitely old enough. Judges will do everything in their power to try not to have a kid testify because it's traumatic for a kid.
Thank you, judges.
And sometimes a kid could testify, say something you don't want them to say, too. So that misconception is a big one. And I often will say, you know, just because your kid says they don't want to go to dad's house or mom's house, that's not the end all be all. Like the judge is going to also sort of say, like, I don't really care what the kid says. Right. I think the hardest thing that I have to tell, clients often is like, what is custody and parenting time going to look like?
Realistically.
Yeah. And, you know, I hear really sad stories, and I think people listening to your podcast have sad home lives, right? And the way people treat each other at home is pretty terrible. And then what they do to each other in front of their kids is even worse, or how they're treating kids too. And so I hear these stories, and then the next question is, so I want full custody. And I have to say to them, everything you've described to me is terrible, and I'm sorry that's happening, but you're not going to get full custody. Like, you have to be prepared. You are going to get 50-50 custody, and you are going to share that with your spouse. And, we have to hear extreme facts to even begin to tell our client we might get, you know, less parenting time with the other parent. And so I think when we have clients come and say, here's all these bad things that have happened, I'm going to get full custody, right? And you're like, no. And those sometimes are the clients we never hear from again, because they're like, I can't live with only 50% of the time. I'm going to just stay with my partner. And that's sad too, right? But I think that's the reality, especially in Nebraska, is the judges are going to do 50-50 custody unless we have an actual probably physical safety concern, and that takes a lot
to prove. Yeah. In terms of moms, I'm just curious what your kind of advice would be, because we hear so often since the beginning of time, moms who say, I want to get a divorce, but I'm going to stick it out for the sake of the kids. And so they stay in a marriage where they're miserable and unhappy. What kind of advice or maybe thoughts would you give them to consider?
I hope you have a therapist that you like, right? Because you are now sacrificing your own sanity for the sake of kids who usually are resilient, right? And truly, some of the stories that I hear are like, well, I wouldn't leave my spouse either, because them being alone with my kids 50% of the time is not going to be okay. But sometimes people are like, your kids will be okay. And your sanity is way more important for you to be able to be happy separately from your spouse. And will co-parenting be awful? Yes, but you will be a happier person, usually. Right. I can't speak for everyone, but I think, like, you better have a therapist that's helping you through that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a ton of research about children of divorce, and outcomes there. And like you said, children are very resilient. And what a lot of the research as a maternal mental health therapist that I'm following and reading is that when you're taking good care of yourself as a mom, that is taking good care of your family. And so if I'm miserable and stressed and I have little patience, that is impacting my children. Even if we're not fighting in front of them or we're hiding everything, they're still seeing a depleted, miserable version of their mom. And so, and again, I don't want to take away from families that truly have safety situations, so they're saying, but I'm wondering too, do you, at least of the cases that you see, do you feel like that's the minority and more?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
That's just a guess of mine, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other really scary thing for moms specifically who are stay-at-home moms too is like financially, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And I think there are some really lucky moms that have huge support systems in place because that's hard. And judges are reluctant to do alimony or for a long period of time. And so the reality of that sometimes also is like your life is going to change, right? Like you haven't worked outside of the home because you're being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And now you have to do that, and that changes routines and all of the things. And you probably are looking at living in a different house and just a totally different lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes that becomes a reason to stay too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I hear that all the time where women are financially dependent on their partner because they're contributing by taking care of all the other home systems and caregiving. And they feel like, financially I can't. So like in an ideal world, maybe, you have financial support through a parent or, some sort of inheritance or something, but that is not the majority for folks. And so are there any, ways that they can prepare themselves financially if they're thinking of divorce?
Yeah, so there's some really good financial planners in town who specialize in divorce, and a lot of them are women, which is really cool because 15 years ago, we had a hard time finding financial planners who were women to refer our clients to. So I'm always excited to say, like, here's some women who are financial planners because I'm all about supporting women in business in general. Yeah. But they also now specialize in divorce. And so they will literally sit down and say, okay, if you divorce, let's talk about budget. Like, do we need to cut some spending things out, or are you going to be okay? Can you financially keep the house if you really want to? Or like, what equity's in it? Maybe we sell it and then we use that for something else. Sometimes the silver lining is, if you're financially dependent on your spouse's income, that usually also means there's some good other assets that you're getting half of, right? Okay. Retirement accounts or pensions or equity in the house and things like that. So I say you should have a good team when you're going through a divorce. Your lawyer, your therapist. Please, please, please always have a therapist when you're going through a divorce. I can't stress that enough. But also a financial planner, especially if you've never been part of the financial planning in your marriage, you now get to do that on your own independently. So just having a new person that advocates for you and your future plans, but then also helps the scenario too of like, if we're taking half of a retirement account from the other spouse, what do you want to do with that investment? Maybe you do need it for a down payment, and we're going to talk about what the tax implications look like. So having a financial planner, and that also may be someone you meet with before you also decide if you're going to actually divorce too, because you might decide, I need to get a different job. I need to get that lined up, or you might decide I'm going to stay.
Yeah, yeah. And then I often hear about women who are maybe like saving up some funds. So maybe they're going to Target and they're doing a cash back part, and they are saving in that way, ways where they have a little bit of money.
They're mad money.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah. That's your mad money. When you get mad, you have the money ready to go out the door.
Okay. In terms of, we were kind of talking about custody. So are there what are some of the custody arrangements in our state?
Yeah, so we have two different kinds of custody, legal custody and physical custody. So legal custody is the decision making, and usually it stems around three different areas: medical, religious, and educational. So some families have some really big things, you know, they're very religious, or they have private school for education, or their kids have some very special medical needs. Sometimes none of those three things are really big deals.
Okay.
So judges usually will do joint legal custody, again, unless we can prove that a spouse has a really bad decision-making history, which we usually can't prove. And then physical custody is literally just what days of the week each parent's having the kids. So you may have a different legal custody scenario. Maybe one parent's going to have sole legal custody, but you still may have joint physical custody. So when we have clients come to us and say, I want sole custody. All right, well, let's break it down. We have two different types of custody. But then when we talk about physical custody, we can do, you know, a lot of different things. If it's 50-50 time, is it week on, week off? Is it what we call a 2-2-3 or a 2-5-5-2? It's just sort of like how many back and forth are the kids going to have? Week on, week off works okay for some families, and it doesn't work well for other families. And sometimes parents can't fathom going a whole week without seeing their kids.
Yeah.
And sometimes 2-2-3 is too much back and forth, and they're, you know, kids have all these activities. So sometimes it's an age thing too, right? Like babies and infants on a week on, week off is probably not working well with bonding and things. But a 16-year-old week on, week off might work okay. So there's a step in Nebraska that is required by statute, and that's to attempt to mediate your parenting plan. So you're going to meet with a mediator with your spouse. Sometimes you're in separate rooms. And that mediator's job is to help you put together your parenting plan, which is what days of the week, what do holidays look like, and then decision-making and legal custody.
Okay. And I think I appreciate that you're telling moms like the reality of, right, of that this is likely going to be a joint, probably 50-50 split. And then like also just the reality is it's going to freaking suck to not see your kids every day. Like that is the most, unnatural thing and feeling. And so that is going to suck, and you will survive it.
Yeah.
And your kids will survive it.
Yeah.
And it's just, weighing on like those pros and cons of, but it'll suck. And there's no really like, putting any sprinkles on that cupcake because it sucks to not see your kids every day.
Think that's where a therapist really comes in and helps. Like, what do you want to do with your time? Because you're now going to have 50% of your evenings and every other weekend to yourself. So like you need to find something to do with that time that's productive and positive. Maybe not productive, right? Like read a book.
Yeah. But maybe not drinking like a couple bottles of wine every night or something. No. Something healthy.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's just such an emotional period of time. And I think that, finding the information and getting as much information and education is beneficial for everybody. I think it's such an emotional time, and we aren't locked into our logic and reasoning when we're that emotional. And so finding an attorney that you can really trust, because they are the expert and we're wanting them to guide us through it, because one, you've probably never done this before, and two, you're very emotional, and we want to make decisions based on facts and best interest and not emotions.
Yeah. I once read sometime, and maybe you can find this because you're a researcher, that your IQ lowers when you're going through divorce. And that's truly, I think, that emotional attachment to what's happening in your life. And it's true trauma, what you're going through.
Any trauma can impact your IQ. So, yeah,
and so
certainly.
I have to remind myself of that, because I'm seeing clients in their worst moments of their life, and they're not able to think rationally. And I can do everything I can to say, like, this is what my suggestion is. And they're like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, I know you don't want to, but like, you're going to spend so much money and time going to court when I can tell you what will happen. And so I think like what support systems you have outside of your lawyer is really, really important. And it's okay to come to me and say, hey, I heard this from my friend, and I'll tell you, great, that doesn't apply to your situation. Or I hear it, maybe we can take a piece of that you know. But if you don't trust your lawyer, all you're going to be doing is spinning your wheels. And sometimes, if you don't trust your lawyer, get a new one, right? If you are in the middle of your divorce, it is okay to switch lawyers. Because the client that doesn't trust me, I want them to trust their lawyer. I don't want in the middle of a case to try and spin my wheels too. So I think that's a reminder too that's really important. Like, it's okay. Sometimes the relationship doesn't work out. And I'd rather have you finish strong with some trust. So
I'm curious, as a divorce attorney in those consults, are there ever times after you've heard somebody's situation and circumstances that you give them the guidance that divorce isn't the best choice for them? Does that ever come up?
No, because the first time someone asked me, okay, should I get a divorce after you've heard everything? I was like, whoa, this is not my place to tell you. And people still ask that, like, what would you do if you were me? And I'm like, I'm not you. I can't tell you this is where you have to work with a therapist. And like, I can tell you all the things that I can help you with and fight for you and be your advocate, but I cannot tell you whether to get divorced. And like, sometimes I hang up at the phone, I'm like, whew, I wouldn't do it, or I would definitely do it, but I can't tell that person in that moment because it is the biggest decision that they're going to make.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're honoring people's ability to make their own decisions, and truly they know themselves best. They know their partner better than you do. They know all of the circumstances because they're living it. And I think we want to empower folks to make decisions independently on their own, based on their own facts, feelings, intuition, whatever 100%. You may call it, all of that. Yeah, good. We chatted a little bit about some legal terms, and there's still some that I don't know about. So I want to ask you a little bit about that, especially as it relates to Nebraska.
Ask me to spell them too.
Oh, Lord, I wouldn't even try. Are you a bad speller?
No, I love spelling.
Oh, you love it?
Like, test me.
No, I'm a horrible speller. Okay, so what's the difference between a contested and uncontested divorce?
Okay, so this is great because people will Google this all the time. Like, we have everything agreed upon. So this is uncontested divorce. And there are truly some very uncontested cases where it's like, yep, pretty easy, short-term marriage, or not a lot of things are commingled, or there's no kids involved. So uncontested just means like we feel like we've already communicated about what we would like to happen with our kids, with parenting time, with our debts and assets. And they are coming sometimes together in a consult. You can have both spouses on a consult. We still only represent one person.
Okay.
But sometimes I'm like, okay, you guys have talked about this. Like, this is going to be easy. We're going to file the documents. We're going to draft some things. There might be some conversations we have to have about details. But there are some truly very uncontested cases. Contested just means not everything's agreed upon. Also doesn't mean it needs to be ugly either. And most cases are contested at the consult, right? Most cases, you don't have spouses that have sat down and had detailed conversations about their lives together. They're getting divorced because a lot of times they can't communicate very well. But sometimes people have moved on emotionally so long ago that they're able to sit down in a business-like manner and talk through the things. And they have spreadsheets of what their debts and assets are. And they're like, this is what we've agreed upon. And I'm like, cool.
Wow.
That's easy.
Okay.
And they're going to save a lot of headache and money. But not everyone is there.
Yeah.
And that's okay, too.
Okay. Well, we've talked about a lot of things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that came in from my, I did a little poll yesterday and asked for some viewer questions, and we've covered a lot of them. I also asked just from some, like, if you've been through divorce yourself, like, what advice would you give? And one of the kind of common things that I saw that really made me sad as a married person, but I think you probably can add to this, is that the person that you are divorcing is not necessarily the same person that you married, and trying to change that view. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, no one gets married thinking they're going to get divorced, right? If you do, that's a whole other thing. But, and also no one has a budget for divorce either.
Yeah.
So that part, I have to remind myself of that too. But something I read, and there's a good book about it, I'll see if I can find it for you. When you divorce, when you're married, you are in a spousal relationship and you are partners of life, right? When you divorce, you and that person become co-parents. You are no longer spouses with them, and you have to realize that shift because you're now not talking about, your future, but you are co-parenting, and that's what should be the primary focus. And of course, you can't control the other spouse's ability to recognize that. But the thing is that I tell people all the time, you can only control your own behaviors and self. And no matter what we win or don't win in court or what your parenting plan looks like, you're never going to change the other person's behavior, narcissism. They are going to still be a narcissist. If they were a narcissist when you're married to them, none of that's going to change.
Yeah.
The judge can't make them nicer.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how you are going to handle that. And thankfully, you're just not living with them anymore. And that's that idea of how much is your sanity worth to you?
Yeah.
And I mean, truly, I have never been divorced, but I have divorced 3,000 people, right? And I cannot stress enough that a good therapist is what you need. I can't talk about before the divorce, but if you have one before, that's great.
Yeah.
But during the divorce and then after the divorce, and the other thing too is it gets easier. The thing that warms my heart is, I see people in their worst times when I'm representing them, and then I'll see them 5 years later in public, and I'm like, oh, you look so good. You just look better.
And feel that heaviness is lifted.
Look happier. Yeah. And so that's the reminder of it gets better.
Yeah.
But sometimes it gets worse before it gets better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, any other bits of advice or words of wisdom to the mom that is maybe just contemplating?
Truly, just do a consult.
Okay.
I mean, please stop getting legal advice on social media. They are not lawyers. Sometimes there's lawyers that pop in and do that, but still, I can't give you legal advice on a one-liner question. I need an hour with you to talk about what is happening in your life. So I really, truly think and kudos to the clients who come to you when you're I just am starting this process to think about it. I just want information. I'm cool. I'm going to tell you all the stuff that you need to know right now. And then I can give you some advice, maybe you just need to start documenting some things and taking pictures of things. And what better thing to do than to just arm yourself with information?
Yeah, absolutely. And in those consults, you had mentioned, and I just want to add on that there might be folks that have free or low cost consults, but you do get what you pay for. So most, my opinion, most good, really good attorneys are going to pay for or charge for their time, right?
Yeah.
And so you might be paying, and that's hard if you're in a financial situation, but also knowing that you're going to walk away with some guidance, some tools, some next step ideas. It's not just meeting with an attorney and telling them all of your problems and then you walk away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's value there.
Yeah. You should feel like you have your questions answered in that consult and know the next step.
Yeah. And then where can folks find attorneys other than Facebook?
Oh gosh, it is so you can Google. I think the best found attorney is some referral of someone who's used that person. So when we see on social media, hey, give me a shark of a lawyer, and we have names, use some of those names, but do a consult with them. So you can cold Google, right? Cold calling, whoever shows up on the top, they've just paid to be up top, right? That doesn't mean they're good lawyers. We have the bar directory in Nebraska that does not focus in on practice areas specifically. So really it's doing some research,
And just curious, if somebody came to your law firm, how could they go about finding an attorney within your firm? You said you have 10. That is maybe the best personality match.
So we have an intake process. If you call our office and say, hey, I want to do a divorce consult with Tracy, maybe we have an intake person who goes over a couple of questions. I might not be the right person just from those intake questions.
Yeah.
And she will tell you, oh, actually, Caitlin is best because she was a child support lawyer, whatever. So there's a little bit of that process in our office. Of course, every office is going to be a little bit different. But if you just call in and say, I want to do a divorce consult and I don't know which lawyer, again, we have questions and we have a streamlined process to sort of figure out what's the best fit. I may do a consult with a client and decide I'm still not the right person. But again, we have lawyers who have specifically worked in the domestic violence arena. We have lawyers who have been caseworkers before. So just different facts of the case may be a better fit for a different lawyer in our office.
I love that. Yeah, really getting people matched to what their needs are and what their specific circumstances are. Well, Tracy, this has been so helpful. Yeah. I know that our listeners are going to find so much value in what you've shared today. So thank you so much for just your clarity and your compassion. Where can folks find out more about you, your law firm, and all the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, you can find us on our website. It's hrlawomaha.com. So we're Hightower Reff Law. You can find us on social media. We have a lot of good information. We have blogs on our website.
Yes, your website has some great blogs.
Yeah.
Which are just like great educational, short, easy, accessible, not law jargon.
Yes.
So thank you for offering that.
Yeah, so you can find us and follow us on social media. I think we have some really good things that happen, impromptu too, that we do on our social media. So
perfect. And you're on Instagram, Facebook,
TikTok.
You're TikToking?
Ooh, yeah.
Okay. Keeping up with the times.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many platforms they're hard to keep up with. But yes, we will have people follow you there. And then to those listening, maybe you're in the middle of divorce, considering it, or maybe you're supporting a friend through it. My hope is that after this episode, you just feel a little more supported, a little more informed, and less alone. We know divorce is not just a legal process, it's an emotional process, and it can impact every part of someone's life. So please make sure to take good care of yourself. And like Tracy said, equip yourself with that team of experts that are going to support you and guide you through it. If this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe, rate and review, or share with someone who you think could benefit from the episode. It really helps make the podcast reach and grow to help and support more moms. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget, take good care of yourself. See you next time. Bye.